Cerydra's first rerun is right around the corner, and a lot has changed for our short but fierce Imperator. You may remember the sheer amount of doom posting and skepticism surrounding Cerydra when she first released, due to how niche her use case was. So the question now is, how well has Cerydra aged since her release? And what factors have caused her to age the way she has in the meta? Is she still worth your pulls? Let's discuss all things related to Cerydra and her teams, and how her place in the meta has shifted. But first, a word from the sponsor of today's video. LD Shop is a safe and reliable top-up site that allows you to buy currency across multiple different games, including Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, among other games. They offer prices at a discount, from anywhere up to 13% to 25% cheaper than topping up in-game. Not only are the prices cheaper, but they make topping up completely effortless. All you need is your server and game ID, and you're good to go. No hassle at all, and no personal information required whatsoever. After purchase, you can see that the Jades are sent to my account within 5 minutes. There are no downsides to using LD Shop for your purchases, as the prices on LD Shop are strictly better than the prices in-game. But the upsides don't stop there. Users who register using my link in the description below will get an exclusive 15% and 5% coupon, which can save you up to $50. Additionally, if you spend $80 in total, you can earn an Express Supply Pass for completely free. If you want to top up at discounted prices with no downsides, using a website and method that has been approved as safe by multiple large content creators in the space, then click the link in the description below to head over to LD Shop and start saving money on your gacha game top-ups right away. Cerydra's kit is very simple in what she's made to do. Cerydra is a support who is made for skill-based damage dealers. While her damage amplification is famously not the biggest increase in the world, Cerydra's main gimmick is her ability to double a skill's usage in one turn at the cost of no skill points. In many ways, especially when Cerydra first released, this gimmick could be viewed as an inferior version of an action advance. After all, action advances also double a skill's usage by giving your DPS an extra turn. Sure, Cerydra's double skill costs no skill points, but it also only occurs when she's able to get 6 stacks of her skill, requiring her to spam her skill and also requiring the DPS to take several actions just to build up to Cerydra's double skill. The key difference between Cerydra's double skill and an action advance is that Cerydra's double skill is able to copy a skill regardless of any other stacking mechanics the skill may require, and this is the real value of Cerydra's skill. In some ways, you could argue that Cerydra actually isn't a support for skill-based damage dealers, but rather, Cerydra is more of a support for enhanced skill-based damage dealers, or in other words, DPS characters whose damage centers around building up to one singular enhanced skill. When Cerydra first released, the only character who made full use of this gimmick of hers was Phainon. Phainon is the poster boy for being a DPS whose damage mainly comes from his enhanced skills, or in other words, his meteors. With the kit fully revolving around building up stacks to unleash all of his damage in one massive skill, it's no exaggeration to say that Cerydra was made with Phainon in mind. Even more so because Phainon obviously can't use regular action advancers while inside of his territory, so Cerydra's ability to affect him while he's in his ultimate made her even more valuable for him. Despite Cerydra essentially being tailor-made for Phainon, there were still some doubts from many Phainon players about whether or not they should pull for Cerydra. After all, Cerydra was still quite the niche character, and she came with her own set of issues despite being tailor-made for Phainon. For starters, her ability to stack core flames for Phainon's ultimate was fine, but nothing special unless you were willing to pull her E1, which gives Phainon extra energy. At E0, Cerydra was still relying on other teammates to help her stack Phainon's ultimate. Additionally, Cerydra's military merit stacks perfectly aligned to give Phainon 2 instances of double meteors in his first ultimate. But after Phainon's first ultimate, Cerydra's stacks would start to desync and become very awkward with Phainon, causing him to just barely miss out on a second double meteor from his second ultimate afterwards. This caused Cerydra to feel awkward with Phainon in longer fights due to inefficient core flame stacking, plus her military merit stacks desyncing with Phainon. These are issues that all get fixed with vertical investment into the team, such as pulling E1 Cerydra to fix her core flame stacking issues, and pulling E2 Phainon so he gets more turns, which helps Cerydra's military merit stacks no longer desync with his meteors. But when they're both stuck at E0, it's understandable why some people were a bit hesitant on pulling Cerydra for Phainon. However, things have changed a lot for Cerydra, all thanks to the release of one shiny new support character, Cyrene. It's no surprise that the final puzzle piece for the Crisis Air teams was specifically made to fix some of their issues, and Cerydra benefited a lot from Cyrene's release. Cyrene's buff for Cerydra herself isn't the craziest thing in the world all on its own. It reduces Cerydra's stack requirement for her double skills from 6 to 5, and it lets Cerydra buff the DPS's crit damage by a bit more. But this buff in tandem with how Cyrene affects Cerydra's best teams ended up being a massive buff for Cerydra. Since we're already on the topic of Phainon, let's discuss how it impacted Phainon teams. For starters, the issue of Cerydra being underwhelming at stacking Phainon's core flames for his ultimate is completely negated by Cyrene, since Phainon no longer cares about core flame stacks with Cyrene on the team. All that matters is stacking Cyrene's ultimate instead, which Cerydra is incredibly good at thanks to her technique at the start of battle giving Cyrene 1 stack, as well as Cerydra's ability to build very fast to give Cyrene Cyrene more stacks for her ultimate. Secondly, Cerydra's issue where her military merit stacks would sometimes get awkwardly out of sync with Phainon's meteors the longer a fight goes on past his first ultimate gets completely solved by Cyrene simply due to the fact that Phainon never exits his ultimate anymore, meaning it becomes impossible for Cerydra's stacks to get desynced from Phainon's meteors since he physically can't end up wasting them on his unenhanced skills outside of his ultimate anymore. Furthermore, Cyrene's buff that reduces the amount of stacks Cerydra needs from 6 to 5 obviously is also a huge help in allowing Cerydra to add even more value to Phainon in longer fights, such as in Anomaly Arbitration. So, while Cerydra was already offering so much value for Phainon in fights where Phainon only required one ultimate, Cyrene's release solved a lot of the issues Cerydra could sometimes face whenever Phainon required multiple ultimates. Needless to say, Cerydra has almost no downsides now when it comes to how well she slots into Phainon's teams, no matter the scenario you're facing. So, should you still pull Cerydra for Phainon? Yes. When it comes to playing Phainon, skipping Cerydra is tantamount to just benching your Phainon. If you want your Phainon to continue being able to clear content in the future, Cerydra is by far his best support, and the difference between Phainon with Cerydra versus Phainon without Cerydra is like night and day. If you care at all about wanting to continue playing Phainon, pulling Cerydra is almost non-negotiable. Almost. The one exception to pulling Cerydra has always been Phainon's E2. Don't get me wrong, Cerydra is still the next best thing to pull for Phainon after Phainon's E2, and that hasn't changed. But Phainon's E2 has always been the strongest spike in power for Phainon, and that also hasn't changed. So, while technically you could make the argument to skip Cerydra to pull for Phainon's E2, which was one of the arguments people made back when Cerydra first released, my counter-argument would be that Phainon's banner just passed, so he probably isn't rerunning anytime soon, and one copy of Cerydra is cheaper than his E2 anyway. So if you are really committed to Phainon's teams, you might as well just pick up Cerydra now and keep waiting for Phainon's E2. Again, all of this is assuming you want to fully invest into your Phainon. If you already have Phainon's E2 and want to keep further upgrading his team, once again, pull Cerydra. Cerydra's E1 is less necessary nowadays in Cyrene teams, but it's still every bit as valuable as it used to be if you aren't planning on playing Phainon with Cyrene. But wait, Cerydra is still a super niche character who won't find any use on your account anywhere else, right? After all, that used to be the other argument against Cerydra back when she first released, her lack of account flexibility. Well, let's look at the other teams Cerydra has found a solid place in. Anaxa has always been Cerydra's other DPS besides Phainon, who she seems tailor-made for, except their synergy was a lot more dubious when Cerydra first released. Sure, watching Anaxa unleash 4 skills all in one turn was very fun and satisfying, but Cerydra really wasn't much different than another action advancer in Anaxa's teams. Her synergy with Sunday and enabling Anaxa's -1 speed setup with Sunday, thanks to Cerydra's speed buff, still kept her relevant in Anaxa's teams, but she was never a huge damage upgrade for Anaxa when compared to the likes of Robin or Tribi or RMC. The reason for this is simple. As we stated earlier, Cerydra mainly shines when she's supporting a DPS whose damage comes from an enhanced skill, not just regular skills. Since Anaxa doesn't have an enhanced skill, Cerydra's ability to double his skills was no different from an action advancer giving Anaxa another turn to use another skill. So, what changed? Well, the exact same thing that changed with Phainon. Cyrene released, and Cyrene completely changed the game for Cerydra. Cyrene's buff for Anaxa provided a hefty amount of stats, as well as an action advance and a skill point, but the biggest thing it did to enable the Cerydra synergy was increasing the amount of bounces Anaxa's skill does. This essentially meant that every time Cyrene uses her buff on Anaxa, it turns Anaxa's skill into an enhanced skill, which is exactly what Cerydra was waiting for. Now that Anaxa's playstyle revolved around building up to one singular turn of a massively buffed enhanced skill with Cyrene, Cerydra's ability to double that enhanced skill immediately solidified her spot as Anaxa's best in slot support, even more so than before. Finally, Anaxa was able to actually take advantage of Cerydra's strengths to their fullest degree by aligning her double skills with Cyrene's buffs. Due to this, Cerydra has aged even better for Anaxa than she has for Phainon, mainly because Cerydra was already by far the most important puzzle piece for Phainon. For Anaxa, Cerydra went from a pretty replaceable character to becoming definitively his best in slot duo when paired with Cyrene. So, should you pull Cerydra for Anaxa? Assuming you'll be playing Anaxa in his Cyrene team, yes. Cerydra is a very strong support if you want to keep playing Anaxa long term. Not to mention the Anaxa team is more fun than ever with the Cerydra-Cyrene pairing. So, that's 2 for 2 where Cerydra is undoubtedly worth pulling if you want to continue investing in Phainon and Anaxa. And while these were the 2 characters where Cerydra was already showcasing her potential, even before her rerun, she has only continued to get even better in their teams post-Cyrene. But these 2 aren't the only ones who have allowed Cerydra to age better than one might have expected. We still have one last male crisis heir to talk about, Mydei. Even though Cerydra and Mydei inherently have some anti-synergy due to Cerydra being primarily an attack buffer, while Mydei's damage scales off of HP and not attack, his kit on paper is everything Cerydra would want to support. Mydei's damage mainly comes from his enhanced skill, and as we've repeatedly harped on in this video, Cerydra is an enhanced skill support. The problem with Cerydra and Mydei is that you can't always control when Mydei gets his enhanced skill, since it varies based on how much enemies attack him. Therefore, you would often end up in situations where it's impossible for Cerydra to double Mydei's enhanced skill because it just never lines up with her military merit stacks. Add on the fact that Cerydra is an attack buffer and therefore doesn't even buff Mydei's damage by that much, and this duo just ends up being clunky and inefficient. But what have we learned from this video? Everything changed when Cyrene attacked. Cyrene's ability to automatically make Mydei cast his enhanced skill makes it infinitely easier to always line up Cerydra's double skill with Mydei's enhanced skill, which now gives Cerydra a spot in Mydei teams. Now, unlike with Phainon or Anaxa, Cerydra isn't far and away the best in slot for Mydei by any means. If anything, she's merely competitive with Tribi and RMC as the final slot in a Mydei team. But the point is that Cerydra does have more team flexibility than she used to, thanks to the release of Cyrene. It's sort of a similar situation to my conclusion from my Sunday video. Cerydra is a fantastic character to pull if your account wants to keep playing the 3 male Crisis Air DPSs. Cerydra is flexible between all 3 of them, and is just straight up competitively or even far and away the best in slot for the 3 of them, depending on which of them we're talking about. Outside of these 3, Cerydra doesn't have too many other teams that will make full use of her. She can be used with Archer, and if she's your only option alongside Sparkle, then she'll do perfectly fine, but her competition is very stiff in Archer teams. However, given how good she is for the likes of Phainon, Anaxa, and even Mydei, and given that Archer was a free unit with a free Sparkle, having essentially a free team that you can also flex Cerydra into if you pull her for one of the 3 aforementioned Crisis Airs is just really nice for her and gives her an added level of flexibility because she can slot into one of the best free-to-play teams. I would never pull her for Archer, mind you, but it's just one other use case that she has, if you get her on your account. Aside from that, Cerydra technically gained some usage with Hysolins, thanks to Cyrene allowing Hysolins to proc DOTs with her skill, so Cerydra lets Hysolins double proc DOTs by doubling Hysolin's skill. But if you want to invest into DOT, there are clearly better investments, what with Kafka being on the free 5-star selector, and Black Swan's recent Nova Flare. Cerydra has always been a cope option for Herta because, despite doubling Herta's enhanced skill, Herta's first enhanced skill still consumes all of her interpretation stacks, thus making her second enhanced skill hit like a wet noodle. So you still typically wouldn't use Cerydra there. Her main teams are with Phainon, Anaxa, and sometimes Mydei. And if you think 3 DPSs is a small amount for Cerydra to be supporting, I would just keep in mind that Honkai Star Rail is probably headed in a direction where supports are more niche for a handful of DPSs anyway, rather than being universal. And Cerydra fulfills that role very well. As a final note, I generally wouldn't recommend Cerydra's signature light cone. Cerydra is a fairly good user of Dance Dance Dance, which is a notoriously powerful light cone for Harmony characters. And there are a decent amount of scenarios where an S5 Dance 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 just straight up outperforms Cerydra's signature light cone in every team. Not that her signature light cone is bad by any means, it does provide a lot of stats, but it's just not necessary, and her E1 is generally going to be the better investment if you want to invest further into her. All in all, Cerydra has, without a doubt, aged much better since her release, largely thanks to the release of Cyrene. Even if Cerydra's best in slot teams haven't changed very much, with Phainon and Anaxa still being the DPS characters who you would mainly consider pulling Cerydra for, her synergy with the 2 of them has only gotten better thanks to Cyrene, and she has comfortably solidified her spot in their teams. I can see why people might have been hesitant with pulling Cerydra on her first banner, due to her kit being niche, as well as having issues with the characters she was supposed to synergize best with, but I think it's safe to say that those issues have been put to rest. Cerydra is the best in slot support for Phainon and Anaxa, and a powerful side grade for the likes of Mydei and Archer. And if you want to keep upgrading your Phainon or Anaxa team while having an alternative option for some other characters on your account, Cerydra is worth it. As far as Cerydra's future in HSR goes, the Elation path doesn't seem like it'll have much synergy with Cerydra, considering the path very much wants to be self-contained with other Elation units supporting each other. But Cerydra will technically still have a future with any new hypercarry units that come out, whose kit revolves around an enhanced skill. I would not recommend pulling Cerydra under the hope that she'll gain future value, because that is never a good way to plan your pulls in this game, but it's just some food for thought. Meta aside, I personally find it really interesting how Cerydra's best teams are a bunch of male characters. Assuming characters like Phainon, Anaxa, Mydei, and Archer all appeal to the same demographic of players, it makes Cerydra pretty easy to recommend to people who specifically want to invest in those characters. And again, it's a similar situation as Sunday, where he's also generally only recommended for a certain demographic of characters and fans who want to keep playing all of those characters in the future. I'm not sure if it's intentional on Hoyo's part or not, but either way, it's an interesting phenomenon where we have supports who almost seem specifically tailor-made to appeal to the fans of the male characters. But what do you think of how well Cerydra has aged in the meta, and how she's been affected by the release of Cyrene? Were you one of the original Cerydra believers from her first banner? Did you skip her, only to now want to pick her up on her rerun? Or will you be skipping her for a second time? Let me know your plans with Cerydra in the comments down below, and be sure to like the video if you found it helpful or enjoyable at all. With new character kits always on the horizon, happen, I'll always have more stuff to cover, so consider subscribing to the channel to keep up with all things HSR related. Thank you so much for watching, and in the name of my Imperator, until next time!